Okay. Well, I would like to start my time with you today by telling you a story. It begins, once upon a time, there was a woman in a faraway land who had an idea, a notion, a dream of a great story about good versus evil, told through the eyes of a child that's taken the world by storm. She was a single mom, and she wrote on a lined piece of paper in a pub. And this is what she wrote. J.K.
Chapter 1. The Boy Who Lived. Mr. and Mrs. Darsley of number 4 Pivot Drive were proud to say that they were perfectly normal. Thank you very much. They were the last people you would expect to be involved in anything strange or mysterious, because they just didn't hold with such a nonsense.
Thank you, J.K. Let's give it up. Okay, where's this from? Harry Potter, yeah. That's right, Harry Potter, a worldwide sensation that started with a blank piece of paper. This is an image from the Borders bookstore near where I live on the night that the final book, Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows, came out I think it was 2007. This is midnight. The store is packed with several hundred people, including Moaning Myrtle over there with a toilet bowl on her head, because that's the character. The children were lined up. One young guy was reading the book so avidly that when it came time to check out, the father had to rip the book out of his hands to check out. And the power of a story cannot be underestimated. Book sales exceeding 400 million copies. Book revenues, $9 billion. Movies, $6.3 billion, and we have one more great movie coming out this summer. DVDs, just south of $3 billion. Basically, it's about a $20 billion enterprise, making J.K. the wealthiest woman in England, even surpassing Her Majesty. So I think there's a spell for this. Shekels, a cumulus. All right, so what's the point? The point is, this all started in the imagination of a single mom who probably had no right to think that she would be one of the world's greatest authors, someone who's inspired millions of children to read. As a matter of fact, the kids go to libraries and say, I've already read all the Harry Potter, what do I do now? And the librarians have to have lists to tell what the kids to do. In fact, I think J.K. should probably get the Nobel Prize for inspiring people to read. So, J.K.'s got it, but who else has it? What is creativity? We could probably spend the rest of the day talking about that and debating it, but I'm going to quickly share you Tom's simple definition. Creativity is when you think, do, or make something new. For me, that's my definition, divorced from utility. So for me, the creative act is a bit about novelty. So the second question is, well, that's fine and good. Who is creative? Oftentimes, I think if you ask people that question, they will shy away from that and they will say, well, I'm not. But I would like to call your attention to the work of Howard Gardner, who's been working at the Harvard University School of Graduate Education for many years. He's thought long and hard about this question. He's come up with something called multiple intelligences. I'm sure many of you have encountered this theory before. But basically it says that we all have many skills, many ways of being intelligent, and perhaps public education takes just a few of those into account. But here, you can't probably read this, but basically he's got 8 intelligences here. And I basically say the answer is we're all creative, some in some areas and some in others. For example, I'm better in linguistic and the logic, but I totally suck at kinesthetic. If I tried to dance before you, I would totally embarrass myself and it would cause the room to empty. But I'm sure many of you are skilled in some of the other areas, perhaps languages or nature. And so the point is we are all creative. And I think that is a key to my work and why I'm here at IIT. And I think it has a lot of importance for policy going forward. Now, my next point to you that's behind my presentation is that I want to say to you that creativity is something that's very American. In fact, it's as American as apple pie. Why? Because I claim to you that America is an invented country. America was actually called into being intentionally. And the power of words is very important in that invention. And I want to start with one famous author, Thomas Paine, an immigrant who came to this country in 1774. He was a failed entrepreneur. He was a corset maker. In fact, he failed in everything he did until he got here and got inspired by the American Revolution that was a borning. He wrote a slim little volume called Common Sense, about 40 pages. It sold something like 600,000 copies during the course of the conflict, which today, in today's world, proportionally would be like 70 million copies of a book. His words, extremely important. Let's have Tom read this out.
We have it in our power to begin the world over again. A situation similar to the present hath not happened since the days of Noah until now. The birthday of a new world is at hand, and a race of men, perhaps as numerous as all Europe contains, are to receive their portion of freedom from the event of a few months.
Thank you, Tom. Well, you can't underestimate the power of words, because people read this all over America and they debated it, and it lit a fire under the Continental Congress and caused them to be actually a little more radical than they perhaps wanted to. And it led to people enlisting in the army, and it really helped propel the American Revolution, the power of words. Flash forward a few months, a bunch of guys sitting around in the hot spring of Philadelphia trying to debate this whole issue of whether we should separate or not. A committee was declared to put into words the reasons for separation. A committee was created, including some of the greatest minds of the time, led by a guy named Thomas Jefferson. Set down the reasons, Tom, why we need to separate. What's at stake here? He created something called the Declaration of Independence, which I'm sure we've all heard and read it. It sits in a glass cage in Washington and in a shrine. It's kind of like church when you go in there. But this is what he said. Let's all read this together. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, etc., etc. Now, when I've done this exercise in many forums, I ask people, what does it feel like to read these words out loud, to hear them? And I hear inspiration, I hear pride, but I also hear anger, because we're not quite there yet, are we? It was an unfulfilled promise at the time, and perhaps for many people it's still a dream. But what I like to say is America is a work in progress. And for those of you who are in the arts and in the creative fields, you know what I say when I say a work in progress. It means we're on our way to perfection. We haven't gotten there yet, but we're making good strides. We are perfectible. And that's what's behind, I think, these words. Now, here's the cool part. This was designed to be read out loud. These guys knew what they were talking about, and so within a few weeks after the Declaration was written, it was circulated to the 13 colonies and read out loud in many forums. This is an engraving of what happened in front of the State House in Massachusetts when a house painter, an artisan, someone like us actually, read it out loud. And in the audience was Abigail Adams, the wife of one of the authors of the documents. And she wrote back to her husband on what she experienced from this time. And this is what she said.
The bells rang, the privateers fired the forts and batteries, the cannons were discharged, the platoons followed, and every face appeared joyful. After dinner, the king's arms were taken down from the State House, and every vestige of him was removed from every place in which it appeared and burnt. Thus ends royal authority in this state, and all the people shall say, Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Abigail. So here's the amazing thing that I'm postulating to you, that what happened on that day. Up until that time, people tended to identify themselves as coming from a state. They would say, like, I'm a Marylander, or I'm a Virginian, or I'm a Massachusetts man, etc. But when they were listening to this document read out loud and they heard the words United States of America, something crazy and magical happened. They said, oh yeah, USA, United States of America. Yeah, United States, I'm from the USA. I'm from the United States of America. But you know what? It was a fiction. It didn't exist anywhere on any map. No country on the planet recognized us. It was in no gazette or point of reference. It was a total act of fiction between the authors and the audience. In fact, I would say that this was the most audacious act of political creativity in the history of mankind, totally audacious. And by the way, if the creators had been caught by the British Army, they all would have been hung as traitors. So it was a totally courageous act, not by all means a certainty to have succeeded. Now, that being said, fast forward to today. What's the impact or heritage of this feat that I'm speaking of? Well, I would say that creativity is our promise. Our promise to ourselves and our promise to the rest of the planet. Why? Because 43 million people born outside the U.S. are here now. So let me see by a show of hands who was in this room was not born in the United States. I'd say half the hands have just gone up. Who here in this room's parents were not born in the United States? That's about a third of the room. Now, who here's grandparents were not born in the United States? That's everybody else. Okay, shout out the word, shout out the one word why you came here, or why your parents or grandparents came here. One word. Opportunity. Opportunity. Yes, and I would say opportunity is just another word for creativity. Now, people could come, when they leave their countries of origin, they can go anywhere on the planet, but they come here by a large majority. So there you see. 43 million people are here, under that 12 million from the Russian Federation. And I think you just put your finger on it, the word is opportunity. Now, one of those guys that came here was I.I. Rabi. He won the 1944 Nobel Prize in Physics for the Manhattan Project. Upon receiving that award, this man whose father was born in Poland and worked in sweatshops was asked, what do you think about this great honor? He said, what do I think? I think in the old country I would have been a tailor. But the answer is he would have been exterminated by the Nazis. He wouldn't even have been able to do that. And so what happens when we have an open door policy and we welcome people to come here? Since 1906, 309 U.S. citizens have been awarded the Nobel Prize. 82 were foreign born, including Mr. Rabi. That's 27% of all of our Nobel Prize winners were not born here. So think of the implications for such things as immigration policy and other things that don't have the word creativity or innovation or the economy on them, and yet look at the grave implications they have for us. Now, a quick primer on where our society is now and where our economy is going. We all know that things have evolved from the making of stuff to the making and delivering of services, and that likewise the job and the management field has evolved correspondingly. But what goes along with that, which is relevant to our talk today, is that 82% of the value of all U.S. companies now are held in intangibles. That is to say, you cannot hold them in your hands. In things such as the equity value or the brand or the patents or the goodwill or the loyalty of the customers or the happiness of the employees, the productivity. These are things that you cannot hold in your hand necessarily, and yet are we equipped to measure them and value them and celebrate them in our business schools? This is a question. This is, I think, very relevant for us. Now, a guy named Richard Florida has written extensively about this, and he says, well, since the economy has changed, the workforce has changed, and so now you have a group of people called the creative class, of which we are all members, prospering in this area, working to deliver the creative economy. And it's about 30% of the workforce, give or take, 38 million strong. But what's interesting about that is, while they are not the majority of the workforce, they get the majority of the wages, about a little south of 50%. And you can see the logic of why that would be the case. When we talk about the U.S. copyright industries, we're talking about an industry that's $1.5 trillion. That compares very favorably to some other major industries that we study in school here. The chemistry, chemical, motor vehicle, financial services, etc. And yet, the creative industries outstrip them all. Here in Illinois, it's about 2 million workers are in the creative field. That's about 35%. And the same thing for the Chicago region. About 32% of the labor force make their livings through their brains. Now, what I'm saying to you today is that creativity drives our economy, but it also drives social progress, too. So we have got great pioneers in Jonas Salk. He did the polio vaccine. That's about 53 years ago. But also Edison, of course, Jobs, but also great innovators in culture, such as Louis Armstrong and even Jane Addams from Chicago, who pioneered social change movements. If you walk into the business section of any newsstand or bookstore, you're going to see books on creativity, out the yin-yang. It's certainly the new black. The new creativity is the new must-have. And why is it relevant? It's because, you know, with creativity, that becomes this. And the reason why you care about that is because beans, when harvested at the point of origin, when I did the research for this, was 50 cents a pound. But that same pound, when it gets passed through Starbucks magic to you, is worth $230 a pound. Oh my God, those of you, anybody who had Starbucks today, raise your hand. Me too, okay. Well, that's an increase of value of 46,000%. I don't know about you, but I'd be happy with a return of 1,000% on my investment. I'd be very happy with that. Well, what's going on there? The creative economy is working its magic. This becomes this. A stodgy bank becomes the Ing Cafe, where your barista is also your financial advisor, right? And so what does this have to do with with U.S. as a nation versus other countries? Well, the Council on Competitiveness did a study called Innovation Report, signed by a bunch of CEOs and university presidents. And they declared that resolved, innovation will be the single most important factor in determining America's success through the 21st century, so said they. But don't listen to them, listen to your boss, or the guys who are going to be your bosses, because IBM talked to 1,500 of them around the country, around the world last year. And what's the number one thing that CEOs around the globe say they want their managers to master for the next 5 years? What's the number one thing? Yes, I love this audience. Yes, creativity, 64%. So it far outstrips the next leadership quality that CEOs say they're looking for. So here's Tom's very simple, I guess you could say, unified field theory of creativity. Prosperity is caused by a literate population who are open-minded and creative, where innovation is allowed to flourish. Put those three things together, and that's prosperity. Unfortunately, America is not doing very well. That's us, right there in the middle. So that's a grave watchword for all of us educators and for policymakers. We can't succeed if we're in the middle of the pack like that. So, are we ready to think differently? Yes? Yes, good. Have we seen the light? Yes, we have. All right, so in my final few minutes with you, what I'd like to do is let us all declare ourselves creativity champions. Okay? So, everyone, stand up. Stand up. Raise your right hands after me and repeat these words. I hereby declare that I, say your name, as of Saturday, March 26, 2011, am a creativity champion, and that I will stand up for creativity, innovation, new ideas, and I'm open-minded at home, at work, and in my community, so help me Edison. You may sit. Thank you. You're all creativity champions now.
Thank you very much, Tom.